Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte clear liners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you could pay with your HSA, FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is journalist Chad Collins. You've seen his work in places such as Dread Central, Slash Film, and Rue Morgue, and he also has an essay in the Second Sight release of Inside. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We're really excited to chat with you, particularly about this pick. So I'm curious to see where the conversation's going to go. But before we do get into that, let's talk about how did you get into writing and interested in writing?
Yeah, so it's not a particularly exciting story, but I think it's probably the same for a lot of people. Just growing up, I was almost exclusively exposed to horror movies. So that was sort of all I saw. My mom was a huge horror nut since she was a kid in the 60s and 70s, so she just carried that over. And I'm one of 5. Irish Catholics have too many kids.
Wait, where are you in the order?
I'm 3, right in the middle.
Oh boy.
Do I give middle child vibes?
You don't actually, so congratulations.
Thank you. I've been told I give either youngest or oldest.
Yeah. All right, I see that.
But among the 5 of us, I was the only one, I think, especially growing up, who really ever had an interest in that. Like when my mom would come home with a new scary movie to watch, everyone else would sort of go to do their own thing. Like my brothers really liked video games, and my sisters just, I think they liked Bratz dolls and just being menaces. Yeah. And I was like, I'll watch this movie, Mom. I don't have anything else to do. And so I just would watch them all the time with her, and it sort of springboarded into my own sort of personal journey as I got older. And, every chance I got, I would seek out more movies. I very distinctly remember, I think I've shared this with you before, Mary Beth, in 8th grade, I got a portable DVD player for my birthday. Those old, archaic devices. And I got The Descent and Halloween on DVD at Target. And
you and I had very similar experiences.
Which Halloween?
The original. Okay. I'd seen both at that point, and I was like, I want to buy these. And then I also got the Netflix DVD subscription, and then it was just, from there. It just now I'm who I am today.
Well, because Chad and I are closer in age than Terry and I. So Chad grew up in a very similar area to me. So we had very similar experiences growing up, and I don't think it necessarily had to all do with being in Maryland, but it might have something to do with living in Maryland. I'm not quite sure. It's got to
be part of Maryland in there.
It's got to be in the air. Something in the water. Something.
The Chesapeake. What is that movie?
Chesapeake.
The Bay? It's the Bay.
Yeah, it's the fucking Bay.
In my
it's
head.
The fucking Bay. It really is. Oh my god. Jesus.
Wait, are you telling me you guys had your tongues bitten out by
it's actually been a little isopod the whole time.
Yeah. Isopod, that's what it is, yeah.
But then how did your love of horror translate into writing about it?
So I think it was something I always wanted to do. And cool. I was in graduate school, which I think is another just shared experience you and I have, feeling all the same things throughout that process. And one day I just was sitting down. I had just got into Orlando, and I whipped out my computer, and I was doing some orientation work. And I was like, over the summer, I'd been watching a lot of made-for-TV horror movies with my mom, especially the final 2 weeks, because I'd left my previous place. So I was with her for like 2 weeks for this sort of intermittent move-in period. And I was like, let's just watch some like really old, grainy, made-for-TV horror movies. So we did. And I came up with the idea to rank them. And I was like, all right, let me just rank these. And I had a great time with it. But then I set it aside for a super long time until like 2 years later, where I was coming up with something to do for my mom's birthday, actually. I don't want this to be like a long-winded story, but basically I'd done a letter in 2018 that I posted to Facebook, and an instructor of mine really liked it because we were Facebook friends at that point. And she was like, can I borrow this for my students in class as one of their like assignments? I want them to sort of write a letter to someone who matters to them. And I was like, okay. So I shared that with my mom, and she was like, oh my gosh, it's incredible. And then as one of five, right, it created these expectations, and everyone was like, well, what are you going to write this year for her birthday? You have to do something just as good.
Yep.
Because this is now like one of your professors has spotlighted this. Now you have to do better. And I was like, crap, like what is beyond that? And I just happened to see on Twitter a like call for like Dread Central pitches. And I was like, she introduced me to horror. Like that's something. I could do something for that. And so I emailed and I heard back, and I was like, I was thinking of writing, what I came up with was an ode to irresponsible parents, like parents who show their kids horror movies when they're way too young for them. And I wrote it, it got approved, and I sent it in. And then the editor at the time was like, do you have anything else? And I was like, oh, I don't actually know. Let me see. So I pulled out that made-for-TV horror piece and revised that. And then it just sort of kept going recurrently. I was like, all right, here's this. And then they were like, do you have anything else? And I was like, oh. And that carried me through until you, Mary Beth, right? This sort of new leadership.
Sorry.
And I still felt like a fraud, and like I shouldn't have been there. And then I was like, I'm just going to put my hat in the ring for one of these staff writing positions. And then the rest is history. And then I had more confidence, and I started reaching out to other places. Around this time, right, is when I was also reaching out to Gaily Dreadful because I was feeling more confident in myself. And I was like, maybe people care about what I have to say, which was a new feeling to me.
Oh,
That's awesome.
that's so good.
Oh.
I didn't realize how, I guess, not new. You've been at Dread Central for a while, but I guess it's like I feel like you have a really good writing style, and it feels like you've been writing longer than I guess you have, maybe is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
It's the academic in us. I think it's the academic in us, too. I think they beat it into us.
To do myself super dirty, one of the first pieces of feedback I got with one of my Dread Central pieces from the old team was just try to remember you're not in graduate school right now and see if you can maybe cut down on that. So that's also very firm in my mind right now, is every time I pull something out, I'm like, I'm not doing a research paper.
And whenever I read it, I'm like, oh man, I love Chad. I love academic writing, and I'm like the worst. And I'm like, hell yeah, we're publishing it.
Sometimes I'd be giving you a pitch, and I'm like, Mary Beth, this is going to be my one pitch that I get to be kind of academic with.
And I'm like, yes. Look, sometimes we have to indulge those darker sides of ourselves, and that's why we do this instead of getting a PhD. Anyway.
Be fair.
That is not to disparage anyone getting a PhD. It is just not particularly for me as a person at this moment in my life. If you are getting your PhD, good for you. You are stronger than myself. And hopefully you're getting paid to do it. Anyway, back to Chad in academia. You're also a professor, teacher? What's the right title for you?
So technically professor. If you're one of my students, it's literally whatever you want it to be because they have no chill. The titles they come up with, I'm like, where did you ever experience and hear these things in your life before? And why are we using that in this setting? But it's okay.
And it's like undergrad, right? Yeah. So it's a lot of younger
Yeah,
kids.
They're little babies.
Okay. No.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear more about how you, what was the first horror movie you ever saw? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, so the first one I have very, very distinct memories of, or there are two. One is Child's Play.
Okay.
And I think that sticks out because even at the time, this had to be around 98, 99, Bride of Chucky time. And so Chucky was everywhere. I didn't understand why he was everywhere, but he was. So I saw Child's Play. It scared the hell out of me. And then we would go to like the mall, and I remember Spencer's Gifts very prominently at the St. Charles Town Center in Waldorf, Maryland. There was a giant like Chucky doll. I thought it was giant at the time. I think it's like probably standard size actually. Very prominently displayed in the window. And being like 5, not understanding the difference between reality and fiction, I was like, oh my God, that's him. That's the doll that kills people. We have to get out of here.
That's amazing.
So that was one. And then Tales from the Dark Side, very, very briefly. It might even actually be, I think, maybe not Tales from the Dark Side. Which one has Karen Black in it? There's like an old one. It's got the killer itty bitty baby doll.
Is that Trilogy of Terror?
Trilogy of Terror. So it's Trilogy of Terror 2, which is why I always mess it up, because it's like a weird sequel. There is one sort of like beat in there where some kid like passes away and then comes back from the dead as like a fish monster to kill his mother. And that really scared me too. I thought fish people were going to kill my mom.
It's a real fear, everybody. It's a real thing we have to be worried about on the streets.
In Maryland especially, with the Chesapeake.
Fish
people.
No, the snakeheads. Remember the snakeheads?
Yes. Did you ever watch Snakehead Terror on the Sci-Fi Network?
Oh, yes, I did. And as immediately when it started with like hillbillies and like banjo music, I was like, oh no, that is not where this took place.
People
like whatsoever. You have
never been here.
You have never been to Crofton. That is where a lot of rich people live. Yeah. Anyway, the fish people of Maryland.
Yeah.
There's a movie title.
Were you easily scared as a kid, though?
I was. Yeah. I was wimpy. I was a baby. I liked them, and I always wanted to be scared. But I was really, really scared. And I'm talking, like, to the point where I would get petrified. Like, I couldn't sleep. I wouldn't go into my basement. I was afraid of being outside at night. But it was simultaneously, like, debilitating because I would be so scared. But I also actively sought it out. Like, I wanted to feel that way. I was like, I want to be like earnestly scared of something right now. And so any chance I got, right, I would cultivate that. I would sit on like scary stories. I let my sister tell me about the goat man who was going to come from the ditch and behead me.
Yes, the goat man.
Is that another Maryland thing?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah, okay. So this is very funny. Again, I'm sorry. This is a very Maryland heavy episode, everybody. Us Marylanders... Maryland's a really weird state. But Goat Man of Prince, it's the Goat Man of Prince George's County. And it's literally a PG County urban legend where there is a man who is half goat, half man, who has an axe that will chase you around if you go to the right spot. Oh. And my dad's best friend, his nickname was Goat Man. So I thought Goat Man was real because I thought my dad's friend was the Goat Man. And a Goat Man was like in my life. And that might be why I love cryptids so much, because, like, I just always had a guy named Goat Man. I literally forget what his fucking real name is all the time.
Goat
I'm
Man.
like, someone asked me, I was like, oh, what's his real name? I'm like, I couldn't tell you. But yeah, he's an axe-wielding Goat Man.
That is good to know. Yeah. I thought it might have just been made up to scare me, but we were adjacent in Charles County to PG County, so it had to have trickled through.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's been around for a while. He'll, like, chase cars and stuff.
Oh, God.
Maryland's weird.
Yeah. I mean, it's no Frogman, but...
That should be the next one, Goat Man. You could really do something fucking weird.
Does Goat Man fuck?
Goat Man definitely fucks. Like, it's usually, like, the top half is usually man, and the bottom half...
Oh.
So top half is man, bottom half is goat. But I feel like if you flip it around...
Okay.
If you flip it, I think you could get something from that.
Yeah.
Listen, top half goat, bottom half man is one of those. Now just hear me out for a minute.
Right.
Hear me out. What if Black Phillip was hot?
I'm not into it. Wow.
Accidentally horny episode about the Goat Man of Prince George's County.
Of all the things to get horny about, Goat Man.
Goat Man.
Yeah, man. Hey.
Love it.
Yeah. But we talked about you getting scared when you were younger. But are you still easily scared now?
I think so. Yeah. Not quite as much. I think right now it's more like existential things that scare me. Like sometimes I'll be driving home and I'll think about climate change and I'll just be like, oh my God, this is the scariest moment of my life.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah, I think I
Cool.
was trying to be like, I'm serious about that, but I was trying to be like funny about it. Like one of those like detached like millennial things where it's just like everything is so horrible, nothing even phases me anymore. But I still am. Yeah, I still get spooks. And I don't think I do, right? And then I go to bed in the evenings and then I'm thinking about all the scary things that I saw. And I'm like, this is horrifying. I can't sleep. Earnestly, Frogman, when I saw Frogman, right? Like I've
Really?
got like a lake back here, right? And I'm thinking, what if there's like Frogman out there just waiting to Frogman me?
But I mean, like, he's a big boy. He's not just like a dude. Like, he's just a big giant frog. So you're like, I don't know. Florida's weird as shit. Who knows what's lurking in those swamps?
I went to the carnival last night and walking back to the car, it just got into my head. There was like a weird like hedge sort of thing blocking where the dumpsters are. And I was like, Michael Myers is back there. He's real. He's going to come through here. He's going to knife me. And then that's going to be the end of me.
So I have a confession to make for Mary Beth in terms of, well, no. So before I watched the movie Frogman, I honestly and like earnestly thought that it took place in Florida because it felt like something that would happen in Florida. So
Fair.
like,
yes.
when I was watching it, I was like, this does not look like Florida. And so I had to Google where Frogman was. So I literally thought it took place in Florida because it seems like the place where Frogman would exist. Let's be honest.
I mean, I do understand that for sure. But no, it is
Ohio.
Loveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
Ohio needs
I had
something.
no idea.
Ohio does need something.
So
Yeah.
This is
I'll
really
let him have Frogman.
With the magic wand. Okay, so you said that you still get easily scared as an adult. Do you remember like the last movie that you saw that brought you back to feeling like a child or that terrified you?
Okay, so it's not the most exciting answer, but honestly, probably Scream 6, as weird as it sounds.
Okay.
Just because, you know, like as you get older, right, you get used to just, you know, movies and sort of the conventions they have. And I've especially gotten really, really good. And I think Mary Beth, this probably has to do with my like recent exposure to anime, where now I can easily pick up on like if a character is or is not at risk of dying in a movie. And so
Anime really does train you to be like, all right, who do I have to not become attached to save my own like mental health?
And you'll see death scenes and I'll be like, that's not a real death scene. They're going to pop back up 2 episodes from now. They're fine. I know that. But when Gale Weathers had her chase scene, I was genuinely kind of thinking like she might not actually make it. And I don't know, there was like some kind of just like feeling and you know the tension there. I hadn't felt something I think that genuine in a while where I was like, I'm earnest, like I'm on edge right now. I really don't know if she's going to make it out of this. And she did. And, you know, in retrospect, I'm like, there was no way they were going to actually do that. But for a moment, I believed it. And that put me back in that space of being much younger where I didn't know what to expect from a movie, which I think is always a really refreshing thing to feel. Just that
really
sense of
is.
unpredictability.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
It's so hard for me to be surprised by movies anymore. And so when one
Yeah.
does, it's like, I love that. I'm here for it.
All right, Chad. We've talked about your horror history, but what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
I brought the 2003 masterpiece, Darkness Falls.
Masterpiece.
Okay, so Darkness Falls. A vengeful spirit has taken the form of the Tooth Fairy to exact vengeance on the town that lynched her 150 years earlier. Her only opposition is the only child now grown up who has survived her.
Thanks, IMDb. Okay. I gotta know. Like, I think I'll know why, but I gotta know. Take us back. How old were you when you saw this? How did you see this? What about it terrified you? Give us your horror story.
So it's a good one. So
Hell yeah.
the only video rental store we had nearby was a Blockbuster. And so we reached a point where my mom would take us, right? And she would let my brothers and I sort of pick out something to rent. And then she would pick out something for her and my sisters to watch. And one particular trip, my brothers really wanted to watch this trashy, like, direct-to-video movie Python, which I've also written about before because it holds a very special place in my heart.
Oh, yeah.
So we rented Python, and they rented Darkness Falls. And I was like, oh, what is that? Like, what is that about? And my sister was really mean, and she was like, you're not allowed to watch it with us. This is for Mom and, Sydney, my other sister. She's like, you have to watch Python with your brothers. And I was like, this sucks.
Python.
I liked Python, but I didn't want to watch Python because I could hear from the TV upstairs, right? I was like, that sounds like something exciting.
It's a very loud movie.
It is.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to watch that. So I went to my mom afterwards, and I was like, when do you have to return this? Can I please watch this? And she was like, let's do it right now. And it's like 10 o'clock, probably on like a Friday night. And she's like, everyone else will go away. Like, let's watch it. So I got 10 minutes into it. And then I said, you have to turn this off. I never want to watch this movie again. Because that opening scene scarred me for life. But I got through it. And the following day, she was like, let's watch it again, but we'll do it during the day. And I did
love
it.
Your mom.
And it still scared the hell out of me. And I was like, I never want to see this movie again, but it stuck with me, right? Because, those movies you see as kids, you think they're the scariest thing imaginable. So then I started to slowly, as I got older, right, start introducing people to it. I was like, this is a really scary movie.
Oh.
I think that, like, the latter half, retrospectively, not so much. It's messy. It's super rushed. It's wildly unclear sometimes what is even going on. But I still think that opening scene stands out. And I think it's probably one of the stronger opening scenes from, like, the early aughts. I would put it there with, like, The Ring, in that it very just adroitly and easily gets at, like, a very primal fear. And then, of course, the rest of the movie doesn't necessarily live up to it. But I carry it with me now as this kind of, like, touchstone early 2000s horror movie. And I'm never going to let it go. I'm going to carry it with me to death because I love that little movie.
Okay.
I love hearing that.
I respect that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say I don't have the same experience with this movie. So one of the things that, like, okay, so this came out in 2003. So I saw it in the movie theater, and I would have been what, 22 when this came out. So I remember seeing it, and I remember being so turn up my nose about the PG-13ification of horror at this time that I was like, oh, this movie is not going to be good, but I'm going to go see it because we went to go see movies every weekend. And I remember not liking it at all. And now revisiting it, I was like, okay, you know what? I have been wrong. 2000 and like early 2000s, Terry has been wrong on so many movies. And I was like, and because I knew that PG-13 was like a problem for me back then. And so I was like, you know what? There are sometimes movies that you can appreciate with age and they grow into something that's a little bit more interesting than you originally thought. And then there's this, unfortunately.
I thought it was going to go in the opposite direction.
Because when I first started watching it last night, I was like, ooh, this opening scene is so good. This opening scene is paced so well. It builds suspense incredibly well. And I was like, I'm pretty sure this is probably the scene that terrified you because it's a little kid in bed. I don't know. How old were you when you saw this?
2008 or 2003. I probably would have been 9 or 10. Probably 10.
Yeah. So probably the age of Kyle. Yeah. And, he's in bed and that whole scene, that whole sequence, I was like, this is really masterfully done. This is a great opening. And I was like, was I wrong? And then it just sort of does not continue that, but I'm so glad that I think that if I were a kid when I saw this initially, I would be in the same boat as you because I think it does really well for that audience because it's very young skewering in that opening, and so there's a lot of kids in peril. If you're a young kid, you're watching this. It's sort of like some of the '80s movies that involved kids that were very attractive to kids because it's like, oh, that's me on screen, and then that me on screen gets like terrorized, and so I completely understand it. But boy, I was like, this movie.
This is Darkness Falls slander.
I know. I'm sorry. But Mary Beth, this was your first time watching it, right?
Yes, it was. And it's funny because this movie absolutely terrified me as a child. because all I knew, so I was really scared of the dark as a kid. And, like, I still am kind of freaked out by the dark. But, like, I, like, had to sleep with the hall light had to be on. I had to sleep with my door open. I needed a nightlight. I hated sleeping at other people's houses because they weren't scared of the dark. So when I heard of the movie called Darkness Falls, I was like, go fuck yourself. And then I heard about the Tooth Fairy. And, like, I was a kid who wanted so badly to believe in magic. So, like, the Tooth Fairy for me was real for a very long time. Like, when I found out that shit wasn't real, like, I had a panic attack. Like, it was, like, devastating. I was like, do you mean that you put the money under my pillow? And it was a whole breakdown. I literally remember my mom driving to the bank, and I definitely had this breakdown in the car on my mom's way to the bank. I was like, the most inopportune time for your child to have this, like, mental breakdown. But, like, losing teeth was, like, very scary for me. Like,
yeah.
I hated it. I was a very terrified child of everything. I was terrified of pain, everything. So whenever I had a loose tooth and someone had to pull it out, like, I was always so scared. And I had a special little pillow that I would put the tooth in, and then I'd get, like, 4 little quarters. So the thought of a scary demon coming into my room, like, when I heard that was part of the movie, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I don't want to lose any more teeth. Like, I was so scared of it. And, like, for years, I was convinced it was the scariest movie of all time. Like, every time someone mentioned it, I would be like, no, absolutely the fuck not. I will not be watching
And you never saw it, right?
And I never. I hadn't even seen a clip of it. But all I knew was that it was about a dark, like, something coming at you in the dark and the evil Tooth Fairy. And I was like, go to hell. Like, I will not be fucking with this. And it scared me so much. And I watched it, and if I had watched this as a child, it would have destroyed me. Like, it would have absolutely destroyed my ass. Like, this is the perfect piece of gateway horror, I think. I know that it is not perfect, and it is definitely rushed, but something about it weirdly spoke to my heart about it being, like, a gateway horror movie that, like, would have scared the shit out of me as a kid. And I understand why it scared Chad. And while it is not as scary as I had hyped it up to be when I was about 10, I know if I had seen it, it would have really been a nightmare for a lot of people. Like, it wouldn't have been good. I don't know if I would have made it past the cold open at that age, to be perfectly honest.
I didn't
the first time. I had to stop.
It was... Yeah. Because it's a good, tense cold open, and it's so cute. Like, I love how they set up this romance. Like, there's a lot of really cute layers going on here of him, like, losing the tooth and the girl and the dance, and there's just
his first kiss.
And there's something, like, really sweet about it.
And his mom dies.
Yeah, that... Well, okay, before that, Terry... But, like, I like the world they're setting up. So when they flash forward, I'm like, I just don't feel like these were the same movie. You know what I mean? They just feel like very different movies. The beginning feels like fairy tale-esque, and then it completely loses that tone. And I think that's a bummer, because I think that fairy tale tone made it feel so, like, even creepier.
I think it would have been stronger had they kept with that. Especially because it's Michael, the little kid, and they shift to him, but it's still really Kyle's story. And I'm like, why couldn't Kyle have been a kid? Like, why does he have a proxy kid now that's going through the same thing instead of just following with his story as a kid? I would have liked that more. It's
very strange. And then they have, like, the weird, like, butt rock playing or whatever, like, very early 2000s, like, he's a man and he's really depressed, like that kind of music.
I think, what movie, it riffs on something, his, like, intro scene with all his medication. There's some other movie that did that first.
Was like, it's like very Requiem for a Dream. It's like, look at all of the
I think that might be it.
Look at all the antipsychotics he's on. I'm like, I forgot about 2003 and, like, they're like, but you know what? I like how they're flashing him with all the pills. He's like, look at him. Look at his sick and twisted mind. And it's just like, oh, we've really shifted tone here. Like, immediately, it's just shifting in tone.
It's so funny, the movies that, like, because, like, a bottle of pills is always, like, an indicator in horror that like, oh, this person has mental health issues, and it's always like negative, and it's like 3 bottles, and I'm like, man, I'm taking like 6 pills a night now. Like,
I'm like, 3's the bare minimum at this point.
but it's always funny to me. It's watching the way in which horror movies have changed in their discussion of mental illness, because I think there are some interesting things here, particularly with Michael, who is like, looks like he might be cutting himself, and like that idea of mental health. Like, I think there's an interesting core here that you can almost see like a direct correlation between some of it with the way in which horror uses mental health now is in more interesting ways. Like, there's like a kernel of like indiness that comes from some of the sequences, but a lot of it is sort of lost in the frenetic way in which this movie is shot.
It reminded me a lot of Dead Silence, which is, I know it sounds like a weird comparison, but there's a lot of this that makes me think of Dead Silence again in terms of like how they had the fairy tale vibe at first, and the cool cold open, and there's like some interesting stuff happening, and then you can tell when studio hands started coming in and being like, we've got to make this an action movie now, and you're like, but that's not the point of this. And they're like, too bad, you have to make it an action movie. And you're like, all right. And then it kind of loses all uniqueness as that all stuff, like all of it gets kind of ratcheted up, which is a bummer. But again, you can see that like perhaps that is not everyone's goal, but a studio might have been like, change it around.
It's interesting that you say that, because that is literally what happened.
Oh,
because there was a novelization of this movie as well, because that was a big thing
okay.
back then. And so the novelization is based on the original script that ended up getting changed and rewritten. But in the original idea, there was more of a backstory to Matilda, and it wasn't just sort of like a 2-minute clip of her life to start the movie. It was a lot more. There was a lot more to it. And also, from what I understand, it seemed like Kyle, it was more of a psychological thriller where you're not really sure if Kyle is having a breakdown and is murdering people, or if it's like really a tooth fairy until towards the end of the film, where it becomes more pronounced. Like, that was the initial intent. And I think you can kind of see parts of that where like initially everyone that dies is, just with Kyle by himself, and we know because the ghost is omnipresent. But I think that was, I don't think that was producers not having enough trust in the audience, and so they made it more that everyone else thinks he's crazy, but the audience knows he's not, that this is a real thing.
Yeah. That is like the overcomplication of those kinds of plots that you see in like early 2000s movies. And again, like, it's so grimdark in a way that is very funny, because like that's that tone of the period. Like we all know the kind of like post 9/11 grungy vibe, but it's not like full grunge. It's just like they made the lights kind of green and like kind of dark, but they didn't go like full weird hospital. Like there's always a weird hospital in movies like this, but this hospital's not weird enough. And I know that sounds weird, but again, like, it feels like they're trying to do a certain vibe, but they don't want to fully commit to it. Because I do think, like, I like her design for the most part. Like, the sounds that she makes, like, they're really, I mean, we all loved a good, like, in that time period, especially with was the Grudge 2004? The US Grudge, I think, was 2004, but Ju-on was earlier. So, like, that, I feel like that time period was very much the screechy time period, but I liked the sound design here. I liked how they use sound, because again, there's some clever stuff going on with the use of sound design with like the Tooth Fairy character, which I really appreciate. And I think the porcelain mask is quite alarming. Like, I do think like the black cloak and the white porcelain mask is a really cool design. And I appreciated that kind of presence in this movie. Like, at least there was some interesting thought behind it.
I've never been able to track down, like, the full origin, but I know that There's like an unreleased toy that was designed for this movie
Oh,
of Matilda,
cool.
and it's like a sick looking like design, and I'm not sure like where that went, like moving into the movie, because there's so much. I'm way too enmeshed in Darkness Falls lore than I need to be. I can't remember anything important, but if you ask me for Darkness Falls lore, I have some. And there was an early promotional poster that had the movie rated R by the MPA. And I've never been able to figure out like where along the process, like all of this cool stuff, this R-rated like iteration of this movie ended up becoming what it is. And my favorite piece is I know that the end credits run like 10 minutes long.
Yes!
Because it's the only way they could like qualify as like a feature film.
Yep.
And I love that so much.
I think it's because they cut out so much of like the actual like psychological aspect of it, or like Matilda's backstory. And it's interesting that you bring up the toys. So there is an article that was written by Paul Lee on Bloody Disgusting. He loves reading novelizations, and so he was talking about...
He does the Lord's work when it comes to the novelization.
Really?
He really does. And so, like, when they shot Darkness Falls, they didn't have a firmly set design for the Tooth Fairy in place. The movie's spectral villain experienced several makeovers over the course of production before eventually settling on Stan Winston Studios' proposal. The final look of Matilda, and this is what made me think about this, one resembling a woman with severe burns all over her body, is unlike the previous design that was immortalized by McFarlane Toys. The novelization portrayal of the Tooth Fairy is closer in line with the Winston model, although the writing submits Matilda's image as more grotesque and putrid. The novelist wrote, "There were burns all over her face, half of her lips weren't even there anymore, her nose was withered, and her forehead was a crackling mass of red flesh." So, very interesting, like, evocative writing there for explaining what she looked like. But it does make sense why McFarlane Toys might not look like the final. I've not seen it, but it might not look like the final.
Yeah, I just found it.
Design.
Looks, and also this is the poster that I had seen growing up, and that terrified the shit out of me. I was like, nope,
it's scary.
It's another example of like a really good poster design that for a movie that is perhaps not as scary as that poster.
See, now this would be a poster almost like I'm thinking of the Avengers or something, would be like the cast of people, and there'd be like something in the background. Like movie posters have gone downhill so much. I'm sorry, but the poster for this is really good, and it's what got me into the movie theater to see it as a 23-year-old or 22-year-old.
Oh, there's a comic? There's like a prequel comic.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to have to read that. I'm interested in that.
Me too. I'm going to have to dive deep into more Darkness Falls now.
Look at that. That's scary as shit. Sorry.
Oh, that's gnarly. Teeth
freak me out. And like, yeah, I don't know why. The teeth stuff, like teeth. I don't know.
So I want to go back to that though, the teeth aspect, because did your parents keep your teeth when they fell out?
Yeah. I think my mom still has all my teeth.
Yeah, mine too.
I don't know
if
mine did.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I
found them once. It freaked me out.
I find that so weird.
Like, what are you doing with my teeth?
It's so creepy.
What the fuck are you doing with my teeth?
I had my wisdom tooth removed like a year ago, and I asked the surgeon, I was like, what do you do with the teeth, like, once you pull them out? And I think she was kind of alarmed because she was like, why? Do you want it? And I was like, no, I just want to know what you do with it.
I eat it.
Like, you're taking a whole, like, where does it go? Where does it go?
It's a great source of calcium.
She's like, we dispose of them. I was like, but where do you dispose of them? Like, do you just have like a bucket of teeth at the end of the day? Like, I just want to know. And I think she thought I was some kind of weird, like, tooth fetishist. And I was like, show me the teeth. Let me see them.
It's so weird to me that, like, we lose our tooth, and it can be so gruesome. I remember my dad, like, I had a loose tooth that was, like, wriggling back and forth but would refuse to come out, and he was like, we're gonna tie a string on it and tie it to the door and slam the door. I'm like, it's so violent. Did
you ever do that? Did you ever have to do that? Like, actually, okay.
No.
Do you want to hear
he threatened it.
Horrifying story? I don't want to upset anybody.
I would love to hear it.
Absolutely. We
It's
love
tooth
upsetting
trauma.
stories.
I had a loose tooth. You can kind of see it here. You see how it's not quite as straight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was loose and it just would not come out. And I was so sick of it. And I would go to the dentist as a kid right? And they'd be like, it's like going to come. Sometimes it just takes a while. And it was taking months. So eventually I just took a pair of pliers and I tightened it and I just was yanking. And eventually I like twisted forward. I smacked it out, like broke through the gum. But in doing so, I also caught some of the tooth that was growing in behind it. And that's why it kind of grew out at an angle, because I totally messed up the root of that tooth that was above it, because I just went pliers and I just took it. I was a kid, I should say. Like, I was a child, but that's why.
Oh my God. That's horrifying to me. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but like I don't have them anymore, but I used to have stress dreams about my teeth just like crumbling. Like I have a lot of fear surrounding losing teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I don't know, it's just teeth in general, body horror, it's such a potent body horror image of like, because they're so important.
Fingers and like toes for me sometimes, but and eyes as well. But teeth have never bothered me quite as much. Probably because I can just yank them out myself. If you ever need free dental work,
it's your new side hustle.
I can help you out.
Side hustles, the dental work. Oh my God. Oh.
I want to talk about Matilda very briefly, because okay, you know, it's the classic story of the woman that is like a little odd to the town, and then people go missing and they blame her for being like a witch. You know, it's a classic story. But I have to ask the question, like, what is she doing with all these teeth that she is buying from children? One, and two, how does she have so many gold coins? Because gold coins are not cheap. I had to Google to find out like how much, and like gold coins were like $20. Like there was a $20 gold coin back in the 1800s, and $20 back then is a whole lot more than $20 is right now. And even now, if a kid got $20 for losing a tooth, that would be a lot. So I'm like, where's she getting this money, and what is she doing with his teeth? It is very sus.
Maybe she's like me. Maybe she just wants to know where the teeth are and have a little bucket and some ASMR, run her fingers through it in the evening. I don't do that. I want to make that very clear.
You heard it here, listeners. Chad has a bucket of teeth and he just rolls his hand through
It's
it.
my white noise before bed.
Good way to guarantee good sleep.
I mean, like my partner, if I don't do it anymore. I did it when we first started dating because I wasn't nice. But if you ever just say to him, like, have you ever thought about like just perceiving and feeling your teeth? It'll freak him out for like an hour. Just the thought of feeling his teeth, because then that's all he can focus on. Is he's like, now I am hyper aware of every single tooth in my mouth.
Okay, so it's really funny that you say that, because while I don't have that, I bite my nails, and I'm trying really hard to not break that habit. And I mean, I would bite my nails very far back. And now that I actually have like baby nails coming out, I can actively feel them. And I'm very cognizant that they're there, and it's a very weird feeling. So I can kind of understand the perceiving your teeth, because I will sit here and go, it feels so weird that I can feel my nails. I can feel the nails, and it's so so bizarre. So I can relate.
This is making me ill.
That looks so concerned.
This is making me ill
and confused. Like it's you. Can you not feel your nails? Like I can.
Now I can feel my nails.
I can feel everything.
I feel like
I'm perceiving too much of my body at once right now, and it's just like really upsetting. Oh, my head's itchy. Oh, I have so many hair. I have so many hair follicles.
I feel this, and my nails aren't that long.
I know. I have the same problem.
My nails aren't even that long, and I feel
my
them.
My friend does that too.
They exist.
She's like, I can feel them growing, weird. And I hate it. I'm like, ugh, stop it. Ugh.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so back to Darkness Falls.
Away from this creepy talk.
Back to how all of a sudden we flash forward 12 years and everyone's like, he killed his mom. But my thing is, isn't it pretty easy to prove he didn't kill his mom if he was like not covered in blood and was like cowering somewhere? You know what I mean? I just feel like if he was hiding, I don't know.
I mean, he had to be a strong boy to snap that neck, because I think that's how she died, right? neck snapping.
Something like that. Again, this is another one of those movies where it's really dark, so you can't really tell a lot what's happening sometimes when you're watching it. Good to know that that's always been a problem in cinema, or at least for a while now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to talk about how expensive it must be to live in Darkness Falls, because the amount of lights that are used in here, and I guess this kind of ties into the lore question too, like, how is there even a town? Because the bitch gets vicious in this movie and just like offs people left and right. And I'm like, this has been going on for 150 years. A, how do people not know at this point? And B, how is there any town left? Because she just like dispatches adults with the easiest of glee. It's so weird to me.
The lore makes no sense. If you think about it for more than 2 seconds, you're like, wait, hold on. Like, I thought you're making it sound like everyone knows about this. So then why is everyone suspecting him if this is a thing that happens all the time? And it's like, once you start questioning it, it doesn't make any sense, which is why you have to just turn off your brain and just be like, no, it's fine. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Because she does basically dispatch the entire town at the end. Like, she does that whole, like, police, and it's like, why was she not, good for Matilda being ACAB, but like, she wasn't, like,
yeah,
years before. I'm like, where did this suddenly come from? But I mean, I think, like you said, Mary Beth, as like a piece of gateway horror, it works because, as a 10-year-old, like, I'm never thinking about that, right? I'm
Absolutely.
saying scary monster flying in air, attacking people in dark. That scares me. Whereas, of course, growing up, I'm like, none of this makes any sense. It is on like the most like precarious logic, and I wouldn't call any part of it logical, but I think, again, having just that experience growing up with it, I'm so willing to overlook those sins and just go in for like a very frenetic, very quick, basically what amounts to an hour long, just the Tooth Fairy is going to off some people, and then that's all I need.
But I also love that the Tooth Fairy is a vindictive bitch. Like, this guy has, like, I love a monster in a horror movie that's like, you got away from me, I will not let you live until I get you, motherfucker. Like, I'm obsessed with that, because that's so scary to me. Like, I'm not as scared of supernatural horror as I used to be, but a good, like, won't leave you alone until it gets you type of thing, it will really get me, because I'm like, that's fucking terrifying. And we talked a little bit about this, like, the light bill that must be going on for this guy, because his apartment is just like all just giant lights. On multiple occasions, we see him go buy batteries from like a gun store, and they're like, "You want a gun?" He's like, "Nah, son." Like, he just like gets like a shit ton of flashlight batteries, and like, kind of incredible that you just see his weapon being light. Like, the whole, like, something about that is just kind of fun. Again, like, there are these fun glimpses of this movie where I'm like, I like that. There's something interesting going on there. But I do love his very, like, 2003 The Ring apartment of, like, someone who is in a horror movie that looks like a photo lab with all of their stuff everywhere. It's, like, all shiny and, like, concrete and chrome. And it's incredible. Also, like, the most generic looking white man I've ever seen in my life. Good for him. Good for him, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, perfect.
Do they ever explain where he's getting income from?
Literally, my question. I was like, how are you affording like batteries? Like, no matter what decade, batteries have never been cheap.
So many batteries.
And he's buying like heavy duty batteries. So I was like, what is the money situation here? Because like, he is.
I need a breakdown.
Someone explain to me what the money situation is for this boy. What is happening? Where has he been? What is his business?
So I was curious about the actor, because I was like, he looks so familiar, and I think it's just because he's a generic white guy. He kind of gives me, oh my God, why did I just blink on his name? Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie, Luke Perry. Mm-hmm. He gives me like Luke Perry vibes. And I was like, why? He's not acting anymore. And then I found out he died in 2007.
Oh, no, that's awful. Oh, yeah. That's awful.
Possibly from sleep apnea. He died in his sleep. Yeah.
Well, that's been scarred for life.
Just took the air out of the room in that one. Sorry, guys. I was curious how old these people were supposed to be. Like, I'm pretty sure that they are. Like, at first I thought that it was like very old people playing like teenagers. Because they were 29 when this was filmed, and because I looked it up, but I was like, okay, so I think they're older, so I can get that. But Michael is so much younger than his only other sister, and I'm like, what happened here? Was Michael an oopsie? What happened to their parents? Like, none of this is explained. She's just a 29-year-old sister taking care of her 10-year-old brother. It's very weird to me.
Don't worry about it. But that also means that they were... Hold on. You're saying 29, but it's 12 years later. That means that they were 17 when his mom died. He was not 17. They were children. They were children. They were like 10.
It's Darkness Falls. Nothing makes sense there.
Age
They
means
have
nothing.
the world's largest distributor of batteries, okay? They have a fun lighthouse. And
I love the lighthouse.
Everyone just pretends that, that's probably why they have a 10-year-old, because they had a middle kid, and Matilda took him. And so Caitlin's parents were like, we need another one because the Tooth Fairy keeps taking our babies.
Shit, that got dark. I also love that in Darkness Falls, the town, they call an MRI machine a sensory deprivation tank. Because that was totally an MRI.
Thank you for saying that, because I was like, am I being gaslit? Like, what is going on? I was like, that's an MRI. What's happening?
It's Darkness Falls.
And then they inject the poor kid with something that burns in his veins. I'm like, what?
I love it. You know what?
I felt so bad.
I love
for
this
Michael.
fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It's
It makes
gonzo.
no sense, and it's kind of fun. Is it good? Not traditionally, but I don't know. I watched it this morning while I was answering emails and drinking coffee, and it was a good time. I just giggled to myself for an hour. It was... Emma Caulfield is the most fucking Mary Jane ass shit of any fucking horror movie of all time. This is such a good example of how not to rate female characters. I'm sorry, but it's not good. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but she is the epitome of just nothing, which is a bummer. Which is about she could have been a cool character, but they made her just kind of annoying. And I was like, wait, she was cool as a little kid, and then as she got older, I don't know.
Who is the actress as a little kid? What is...
Emily Browning.
Emily Browning, yes.
Yeah.
That's always really exciting, because I really like her.
I love Emily Browning.
Yeah, because she was in another PG-13 horror movie, I think. Wasn't she in Uninvited? I wish I loved.
The remake of The Tale of Two Sisters.
Yeah.
She was also a little ghost ship girl.
She was! That's
as
right!
a kiddo.
Oh, shit, that's
and
right.
she was Baby Doll in Sucker Punch.
A
movie that I will defend.
unironically-
I love that movie and will defend it forever.
Do you really?
I do, actually.
So do I. I don't like to admit it.
Oh, I do. I say it with my whole chest. I don't care anymore.
Yeah. I knew that Mary Beth loved that
I saw
movie.
it with my
I did
guy
know
friends.
that. I've never
I saw it
seen
with my
it.
guy friends in high school, and I was like, that was so cool. They were so kick-ass. And they were just titties. I'm like, no, they were bad bitches. So yeah, anyway, off track again.
I thought it was the coolest thing in 2009. I was like, I'm obsessed
I
with it.
also thought it was the coolest thing in 2009. Anyway. Darkness Falls. What else? Is there anything else we want to talk about with Darkness Falls?
There's a couple things. I'm not a huge fan of some of the set pieces, I'm gonna be honest. I did like the police station one, but the thing that cracked me up is I was watching this and I was like, wait, there's a direct line between this and Malignant with the cop killing scene.
That. I was gonna say Darkness Falls walk so Malignant could run.
It also walks so that Alan Wake could run, because I was getting Alan Wake vibes with the amount of flashlight batteries that you had to have to defeat the darkness. I was seeing so many connections. So many connections.
It was funny to see how I can see how even these movies that aren't great have given ideas to people about gonzo set pieces. Because again, I think I love a good like massacre scene in a movie, especially if it's like a well choreographed one and it's like a bunch of cops. I'm just like, oh, this movie is like going for it. And I can appreciate when a movie decides to just say, yeah, we'll just massacre an entire town of people. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, something about that's just like neat. That makes me sound psychotic, and I apologize.
It's super neat when whole towns get massacred.
It is, absolutely.
But like, I don't know, think about 30 Days of Night. Like, it's just, you're not afraid to go that far with the scale. And I think not a lot of movies will go there.
I think a lot of times movies will pull their punches and they will have that cool concept or that cool idea, or they'll have, I think, like the foundation for that scale, and they just won't. And that's one of those things that I can't think of any particular examples right now, and I'm nice, so I don't want to name any. But there are one of my sort of more regular just responses to movies is, you know, I'm thinking this could have been so cool if you had just not even necessarily made it bigger, but taking it where like it should have gone, because you've got like this cool concept and maybe you've got a cool setting, and it just always feels like it's constraining itself by doing like the smallest possible thing. So I like that in some capacity. Darkness Falls is like, we're going to go big. We're going to involve a bunch of people. And, you know, it reduces that scale, you know, immediately after that some, but I like that it kind of goes for it.
Yeah.
What I love is the hospital sequence where like all of a sudden they get like, I think 3 basically red shirts to follow along with them so that we can have people that die. And I love that like they have to jump halfway down the stairs in darkness and they're like, we're going to jump all together so there's more targets. And like, well, we know who's going to die in this one. And it's like, I don't know. It's just, it cracks me up that they're like, we're introducing 3 new characters just so that we can have them get picked off. And so the main characters can survive and we build tension. I love that. It made me giggle. I was like, this is so gonzo and ridiculous. And I love it. I have to say.
Well, especially when at one point a nurse is like, what about all the other patients? He's like, it doesn't matter. She only cares about us. And I just like,
why?
It's so like melodramatic and campy. And I love that. It's just like, it's done so straight. And I just have to laugh because I'm like, it's the tooth fairy coming after the hospital. I don't know. It's just like funny. And it's, yeah.
So,
yeah.
One of my pet peeves in movies is like a person, and maybe you guys can relate to this. One of my biggest pet peeves as a writer writing about film is when you're watching a movie and people don't say characters' names at all. Because it's like, I don't know who these people are, particularly with like pre-release movies where it's like, how am I supposed to name these characters if no one is saying their names? It's like, how am I going to differentiate them? This movie has the exact opposite problem where everyone keeps saying everyone's name like nonstop. I thought it was, and I think the reason that it jumped out to me is in the very opening scene with the mom and Kyle. She keeps calling him Kyle. And I'm like, do you know that this is your son? Like, it's just like, I get you need to introduce the name, but then everything is like, she keeps saying, it's okay, Kyle. You can go to your room. There's nothing in there, Kyle. And I'm like, I don't think a mom would say that to her kid. It's okay, baby. You're good. Or, you know, it's okay, honey. We'll take care of it. No, it's Kyle. And then from there on, I just was so hyper focused on the fact that everyone says people's names constantly. And I don't know why, but it's just like I kept focusing on how often people say each other's names in this movie. And it's just another thing that I was like, what is happening here?
I will say I did not have that. I did not notice that at all. But I also have a really hard time retaining names. Like when I watch things, and I just always look it up on IMDb because I think it's like an ADHD thing where like I just have a hard time remembering that stuff. So I'd be like, I have no idea. Did he say his name at all? I don't remember.
I get really bad like that sometimes. And if I'm really like, especially because sometimes like I'll put something on and like I will be paying attention, but I might be doing something else sort of on the side. And then I will especially if like, you know, if I'm watching something, I will just end up like if I'm telling somebody about it, like, you know, when Christian comes home, I'll explain it to him and I'll be like, so the guy and then girl and then kid and then other guy and then other girl. And they just become like these weird nebulous like people. I'll be like, main character did this and then side character came and did that. Cause I'm like, I can't remember any particular names.
Meanwhile, my husband has like fucking flash memory and remembers everything. And I'm like, I don't understand.
Well, the next time you end up watching this movie, Chad, I want you to pay attention to the amount of times that they say.
Now that you've mentioned it, I know that the next time I watch it, I'm going to be like picking up on that the entire time.
It's a lot.
That
It's
and
a lot.
batteries. I'm going to pay attention to batteries and names.
Is there anything else we want to touch on before we wrap up?
No, I will say that I'm looking at my notes and I love that there is a cat jump scare in this.
That's how you know it's a good early aughts movie, if there's a cat jump scare. You know what I mean? We just always need a good cat jump scare. Oh, and I just have to say, the little kid's little voice, his little voice, where he always talk like this, she's gonna kill us. We're all gonna die. You just
The
have
Australian
a little
kid
voice.
that sometimes couldn't hide his accent.
Yeah, okay, yes, that was so funny. I was like, buddy, I think you. I was like, I was watching it. And I'm like, am I just not awake? Like, what is going on right
He
now?
studied at the
But
Nicole
his-
Kidman School of Acting. Where that accent's just going to come out whenever she sees fit.
There's little to no control over it. It just comes out whenever it decides to. But he was just like, they just gave him that voice to hide his Australian accent. She's gonna get us. The whites have to stay on, sister. It's just, it's just such a silly movie. It's a silly movie, and that's not a bad thing.
No.
But it's silly. It's definitely silly. Sorry, Chad.
What is funny though, now that I'm looking at it, apparently this movie was co-written by James Vanderbilt, who would go on to write for Scream 6. We're gonna write Scream 6 and
What?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a fascinating trajectory.
Yeah. This was like his first credited script on IMDb. It was a co-written, but based on the short film by Joe Harris. Yeah.
Fascinating.
I like the thematic link there between Scream 6 and Darkness Falls.
Which is a movie that terrified you as a kid, and also
as
is a
an
movie
adult.
that you talked about as an adult.
Wow.
Synchronicity.
So thank you, James Vanderbilt.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
uh,
Synchronicities. Wow. Well, do we want to wrap up and give this our rating out of 5?
sounds good.
All right, Terry. You are up first. How many Darkness Falls electric bills out of 5 do you give Darkness Falls?
Well, I think we're starting off in probably the lowest score because I'm sorry, Chad. This movie was not for me, and I was really hoping that I would have like some epiphany 21 years later, and I would like come around to this movie. But this wasn't it for me. It's not my cup of tea. So I'm unfortunately just gonna mercifully give it 2. I'll give it 2 electric bills out of 5.
Okay.
And it can only go up from here. So Mary Beth, what is your score?
I'm gonna give it 3. I had a lot of fun watching this. Like, I know it's not a perfect movie, but I think I admired the swings that it tried to take, and it just had such a distinctly like 2003 feel to it.
It sure
that
did.
I didn't think I was nostalgic for, but I was like, sometimes I kind of like the cheesiness and the silliness and the wackiness. And I don't know. I just had a good time watching it. It was fun and wild to finally experience it now after years of expecting it to be like the most terrifying movie. I also got this and Cherry Falls mixed up, so I thought Brittany Murphy was in Darkness Falls for a very long time.
Wow.
Yeah. But I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I got to see it. I think it's an interesting take that is not executed the best, but I admire how they tried. It's a very good movie to have on in the background. Like, you pay attention to the cool set pieces, but if you're not paying attention for like the full thing, you're not missing a lot. So I don't mean that to be rude, but anyway. So it's 3 for me. Chad, what about you? You have the final word. How many Darkness Falls electric bills do you give this movie?
So if I'm being realistic and I'm trying to be objective, I have to give it probably 3 or 4 electric bills. But I recognize that this is going to be singular to me, and the 3 other Darkness Falls stands out there. Can count them on one hand. But I've got to give it 5. And I think that's genuinely just because it was such like a foundational piece of like my horror experience growing up, that I cannot watch it without that perspective still. I can pick up on some of the things it does sloppily. As an adult, right, it is so rushed, and it feels like a patchwork movie. Probably accounting for all the character names, first names. I think just a very just chaotic production that just piecemealed a bunch of different things together and said, maybe this is a movie, if we're lucky. But I can't not see it like I did when I was that 10-year-old. And it reminds me a lot of 2002's They. Wes Craven presents They. I don't know if...
Oh my God, They.
I mean, thematically, right, still Stay Out of the Dark. Another just objectively not great movie that because of when I experienced it, it's hard for me to let go of. So
Yep.
I'm going to give all my batteries to the 5 Darkness Falls electric bills.
Thank God they're going to need all the batteries they
I
can get.
respect that. I know.
I will say, opening sequence, 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 for me. Opening sequence is killer. But well, thanks for joining us, Chad, to talk about Darkness Falls. Where can our listeners find you? And the floor is yours to plug away if you have any articles coming out or what you want to talk about.
So you can find me on Twitter at ChadIsCollins. I'm building my Letterboxd, so if you want to watch me give outrageously high ratings to early 2000s horror movies, you can follow me there at Chad Coolins. Like the word cool, because I'm still a 12-year-old sometimes.
Hell yeah.
And always tune in to Dread Central for fantastic work from a fantastic sort of slate of writers.
Heck yeah.
Well, listeners, you've heard from us, but I can't find you on Letterboxd. What's going on?
I think I follow you. Did you
Okay.
not follow me back?
I don't pay attention to that on Letterboxd. I'm so sorry. I'm just like lazy.
No, I don't. I don't think it notifies. I never know who is or is not following me unless I happen to check.
Anyway, listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What was your experience with Darkness Falls? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it terrifying to you? Please let us know by sending us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on social media. I am at MB McAndrews on Twitter and at MB.McAndrews on Instagram.
And I'm McGailey Dreadful everywhere.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on social media at Scarred Podcast on Twitter and Blue Sky, and at Scarred for Life Podcast on Instagram.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. And if you want to help support us, we do have a Patreon.
Don't forget to vote for us for the Rondos, I think, if this episode comes out before April 16th. I don't know what time is, I don't know what dates are, but if it's before April 16th, vote for us in the Rondos. If it's after, I hope you voted for us in the Rondos. Woo! Cool. Anyway. Just quirky girl things. Anyway, listeners, thank you so much. Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
Until the next Rondos.